Well, afternoon, zombies. How are we doing today? It's only 2:10 in the afternoon, West Coast time, on the 23rd of October, 2025. Imagine my shock when I started discovering that the United States Coast Guard is going more and more with its job of protecting our coastline, that we have them going up and down the waters of the Rio Grande River in Texas area to go after cocaine seizures, drug seizures, immigration situations along a narrow band of water. Think of it this way. If anybody happened to remember the history of the Vietnam War, we had to use the United States Navy outside of the waters of Vietnam, but we also used the United States Navy for the waters inside Vietnam. And during that war, we had the Brown Water Navy, fast patrolling PT boats going up and down miles and miles of water to fight the enemy. Well, it's nearly the same principle we got over here, except they're trying to find the enemy, not neutralize, but probably capture, persuade, interdict. So with the funding that they've got already from the big, beautiful, badass bill that's already screwing us over left and right, Coast Guard's got more operating funds to deal with. From some of the news stories I'm coming across, they're going to be going up and down 260 miles stretch to, as I said before, counter the influx of drugs and deter and interdict illegal immigration across the stretch of river. And it's got an operational war thing about it. They call it Operation Riverwall. So if you're in the Rio Grande area and you happen to see this going, they've already talked about it on their local news about yesterday or day before yesterday about this one. The information came out on the Coast Guard official website before they crashed it. I got some information from it. That they are deploying a lot of assets out there. But they can't go into specific details of how many people they've got out there. But sufficient, they're beefing up operational border. So let me show you something that I'm learning more and more about here. I want you to go to Google Maps or whatever kind of map app that you're using. And I want to show you something that we got going here. If I happen to put this in instead of just the usual satellite information, I'm trying to put this onto a layer so I can see the default on this one if the computer is going to cooperate with me. And she is going to be dragging her. Okay, I'm just going to go over to terrain. I'm going over to terrain. Not traffic. I want to show you what we're dealing with regarding the Rio Grande River. Of how far this thing is going to be extending from. So, where the hell? You follow it from the coastline of Texas. And yes, there are streets and stuff in there. What I'm trying to find out right now is what I can look at. Terrain, street view. I want to go for default. I don't want traffic. I want terrain. I want terrain. I don't want satellite. I don't want traffic either. However, I could take air quality and just switch it back over to terrain. That would help me look at it a little better, because now I can look at our river systems. and the waters and the shades that we have over here. You get close enough, try to discover a few things. I'm going to switch this over actually to satellite if I can actually track that river. It's a long stretch. The other thing I could do is I want map of Rio Grande River. World Map Go, printable map, or Wikipedia, World Atlas. I wanted to get an image of what the map, actually what the Grand looks like, because I am not familiar with portions of that territory, and I want to get myself familiar by looking at a geophysical map of it. If my computer can actually cooperate with me for a change. I'm going to take some stuff off of this. I'm using up too much. I wanted to get a look at the map, see where it stretches from one point to another point, because I know it goes across Texas, but does it also go into New Mexico and Arizona territory as well, that people have had problems with regarding navigational issues? Yeah, my computer's having issues. Hardest thing for me to do is use a map app on my cell phone. I much prefer looking at the other stuff while I'm doing things. So, while my camera is still going on, I am switching over to the VAC app right now, and I'm going to be looking at, hello, there we go. The processing power in this monster is, it's ancient history. But then again, we are dealing with ancient history, aren't we? Okay, so let me get see if I get these systems working here. That would be my dog belly aching for my attention. What I would also need is while one computer is having a connection fit at this point over here, I have to have backup at this point to take a look at things, you know. Navigation. Okay, here we go. Alrighty. Yay. Sharper image. Okay. Rio Grande River map. Okay. So, here I'm back over here again. Usual map. And the Rio Grande, starting from portions of Texas and the Mexican borderline areas. Oh, come on, damn it. Okay, give me a minute. I'm going to put you on pause for a second while I get this damn thing to work. Okay, guys. Through the image searches, I've found a map from the Rio Grande. It's called the Georgia Map Studies. Starts from Brownsville, heads all the way over to El Paso. Then from that into New Mexico, well past Santa Fe, and going into the Rocky Mountains of Colorado where it starts. They're only worried about the Texas border. Between the sections of Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico, we've got military ground area. I mean, we've got, I think, between Arizona and New Mexico, we've got a military base that Trump already set up for immigration issues. And we've had people crossing the Rio Grande, and all they want to do is more issues with it. They tried barriers. They tried spikes, strips, flotation devices. They had people injured and dying out there. They're trying to avoid as much issues with it as possible. They've had lawsuits, the federal government has over it, and the state of Texas had lawsuits over it as well, regarding their draconian methods of trying to keep people out of the river. So, between El Paso and Brownsville, introduce the United States Coast Guard. It is through here that our Coast Guard is supposed to be protecting our borders. Technically speaking, they're doing what they did in the Vietnam War, except they're not hunting and shooting. But they are hunting and preventing, their logic. So, with the flotilla of small river boats, they're going to be patrolling up and down 24/7 apparently to keep the traffic out. They're not saying how many boats, they're not saying how many personnel, but up between El Paso and Brownsville, this is what you got, guys. Now, Coast Guard is supposed to be protecting our coastline. Don't get me wrong, they are supposed to be protecting our coastline. We expect them to protect it all the way from one border to another border. If I'm going to be going back over to Google Maps, on the computer I'm usually working with anyway, I'm going to be looking at the borders that they're normally patrolling up and down the waters. Care to join me? Okay, so I'm going to be looking at the entire Northern America. I'm going to look at the first western end. From Mexico, from the Baja Peninsula area into the international waters a little bit. They'll patrol from San Diego. You can't go into Mexican waters, but they can go to international a little bit if they have to. And they will go from the southern coast all the way over to British Columbia, all the way to SeaTac, all the way to the Vancouver area. And there's that Vancouver Island. They'll patrol up there if they have to. They get permission from Canada, they may go further, but that's usually Canadian territory. But we also have Alaskan territory that stretches all the way down as well. So between Vancouver and through the Hawaii Passage, Prince Wales Island, that is still British Columbia. But part of that area, if I'm going to switch it over back to the regular map on this one, to give me a good look of what I'm looking at for the state borders. Okay, so we have the island chains between Prince Rupert, Port Edward, and that all the way up to Vancouver Island. We're talking about Canadian territory. That's British Columbia. That's Canadian Royal Navy out there. But Kirkatchekan, that is beginning of U.S. territory, extending outwards into the ocean. Inwards, you still got island chains. Some are protected by British Columbia, Canadian Navy. And heading all the way up the coastline of those island chains. Skagway, Juneau, that's still part of Alaska. That's part of U.S. territory. Yakutat? Yeah, Yakutat. Straight through that area. Part of the Kilauea National Park and Reserve. But that's inside. But right along the border that goes all the way to the tip end of Alaska. And on the other side, that's U.S. Coast Guard territory. That's normally patrolled by air and sea. What they're doing to protect us is by creating the brown water navy again. I mean, they're using it on some of the riverways on the East Coast, including around Washington, D.C. We have a few Coast Guard bases out there. But they're situating themselves at the tip, Brownsville and Monterey, where they're going to be going further into the riverways. And following that river, they're going to be heading up, well up, till they get to New Mexico and then shoot up with the river. But they're going up to the border. They're going up to the border where it is. I think right along to, let me see, what's it? Ciudad Juarez, Fort Bliss area. There's your military areas over there too. But that's their territory. That's the stopping point, or else that's going to be the disembarkation anyway. But they're not doing anything further up. They're only protecting the Texas border. I never thought that we'd get so damn paranoid that we have to get a brown water navy in there. Why couldn't they do it throughout the waterways of Florida, except our protected areas? They could have do that for Louisiana going up to Mississippi. Do they ever? Or to Monty, Missouri? They do that too? Did it go through the channels regarding Charleston or Wilmington? Going over to Columbia? Of course, they can do the civilian craft when it comes down for New York and New Jersey. Port Authority covers that territory. We have the U.S. Navy taking care of Norfolk. Would you also have the Coast Guard out there taking care of it too? Maybe. And how about the coastline of Delaware, Baltimore, and Maryland? Well, that's definitely because we're closer to Washington, D.C. So I can understand that point of view. Totally further inland. How about we're patrolling the riverways that leads all the way through Vermont and New Hampshire, that goes right up to the Canadian border. I wonder. Now, somewhere between Canada and New York, we have the waterfalls. Somewhere in there. But we have plenty of river passages. People love Niagara. But does the Coast Guard also patrol the waterways between the borders that we have? There are a lot of waterways. But are we going to be invaded by Canadians pretty shortly? Crazy ass people who want to cause more issues than we have. By the way, where the hell is Niagara anyway? I must have passed it. Because on one side you have the United States, and the other side you have the Canadian border. We're right along. Where the hell we are? St. Lawrence. Okay. So I've been traveling over along the St. Lawrence River, the border between the United States and Canada. Wow. How about that one? Somewhere in the rapids, we've got. Well, I gotta put it in there. Niagara Falls. Slowly I turn. Step by step. Inch by inch. Yeah, I'm doing a little thing on that one. I'll torture her ass. Alright. So here we are. What riverway do we have here? I wonder. Oh, wow. Okay, so we got a big lake. Okay. It's right by Hamilton and Toronto. Wow, okay, cool. I was looking more at the Montreal and Ottawa area, but I was further up north than I thought. Wow. So in one of the lakes we have out here, up north, I really got to take a geography class again. I mean, I really got to get into it. This was, Lake Ontario? So Niagara Falls and the Niagara River goes right between the United States and Canada during that time. Okay. I have to keep messing around with the maps to learn a lot more stuff, I'll tell you that much. Are we going to be needing any Coast Guard out here too? I mean, are we? Are we going to get any smugglers coming from Canada? Should we actually have patrol boats, destroyers, river rafts from the United States government to protect us from the evils of Canadians? All right, Canada, I'm putting you on notice here. Are you going to be that evil and that corrupt that you're going to be allowing whatever kind of culture you have to influence us mighty Americans who are so screwed up right now we don't even know what the hell we're doing anymore? And that you have the gall, the absolute gall of controlling the Niagara Falls by putting a stage in? I was trying to make fun regarding the situation regarding the Texas border. And I'm starting to think, well, since we already got the Coast Guard trying to protect everything else, and now we got to do the rivers, are we that much more complete, or are we that much more paranoid? And because we don't have a river extending from the west coast of Canada and the United States all the way to the east coast, except through the Great Lakes area, we have landlocked area. Do we need to do a river channel somehow? How many billions of dollars can we do for a river channel between the west coast and through the lakes so we can actually have the United States separate from Canada? And therefore, spending billions of more dollars on Coast Guard. I wouldn't put it past the son of a bitch to think of that one. I'm talking about the son of a bitch in office and also the other clones of his. I mean, he's renewing, wants to get this patrol thing going on for Texas. It's got to be evil port. It's got to be evil territory. It's evil muddied water. We're going to be looking at it as a Vietnam, aren't we? Because they're coming over. It's the, what are you going to call them now? What are you going to call them? There are a lot of slurs that they used in the Vietnam War. From the North Vietnamese to the Vietnamese to the Viet Cong. A lot of slurs. So are we going to be using slurs against Mexico and anybody Latino coming through the Rio Grande, except calling them illegal and that's about it? What happens if you're a white dude? What happens if you're a white Afrikaner going through Mexico? You didn't have your paperwork and you're going through Mexico. And then you get over to the Rio Grande. You're going to be pulled over? But you're white. You're not Latino. You're not black. You're white. But you're talking a foreign language. Are you going to be allowed over because you're talking a foreign language? It's one thing I can understand as being security paranoid when it comes down for protecting of our capitals. I can understand that. But just how far are we going to go? Just how far are we going to be paranoid about our own damn security? Where we have Homeland Security and ICE agents getting tactical missiles and warheads. Since when does ICE and Department of Homeland Security need tactical weaponry? For what? And deployed against who? And is Pete Hegseth giving his permission? Trump's already out of it anyway, so it's got to be Steve Miller at that point. I'm just saying. That being said.